What's going on, Rick?
Hey, Maddie, what's cracking?
Nothing, man. Just ready to do another podcast.
Yeah, I'm excited. I already know today's topic, so I'm very excited. So tell listeners what we're talking about today. And
Well, today is I like it. It's a good topic. I want to talk about how we came to do what we're currently doing, an Alloy Fitness franchise. So I thought you could tell your journey from when you started this place to kind of where we evolved and to where we're at today. I think
that's
pretty impactful for people that are looking to invest in a business or start their own business.
Well, yeah, I appreciate it. So, we just turned, what is it, 27?
27, yeah.
So we're in our 28th year right now, which is nuts. And that just happened a week or so ago. So seems like it went really fast, but that's a long time.
27, I mean, it's pretty wild.
How old are you, Matt?
I'll be 34.
Right. So imagine that. I was in here slinging weights around when you were in diapers or wherever you were.
I could see it. God only knows what was going on in this place 27 years ago.
Exactly. Well, I'm going to tell you actually. So, listen, I was sort of paying my way through school as a personal trainer, and personal training was a very new industry. There wasn't a lot of validity around it. No one really knew what we did. But everyone still needs a coach. Like that still holds true today, right? What were we really doing? Showing people proper exercise, coaching basic good nutrition, and holding people accountable. That was it. And of course, there's always a market for that, right? Mm-hmm. That's forever and a day, something that everyone's going to need. And everyone's had a sports coach since the beginning of time. So it made sense. It just wasn't really an industry. So I was bouncing around between different health clubs and going to people's homes, things like that. And I thought, it'd be neat to put all of these experiences of private coaching into four walls, right? So to bring those in and try to control the customer experience around it, like have a place just dedicated to training. So I had a client that was willing to invest. It wasn't much, but we invested enough to open a 1,500 square foot training center. And I brought in some friends of mine that were in the industry to work with sort of their clients, and that was the birth of it. And there was no Internet of Things, so I can't, pretend to know for sure, but I think I was the first ever dedicated personal training facility.
So you were a personal trainer, knew nothing really about opening a business.
Nothing.
And then just came in and
nothing at all.
Started rocking it.
Exactly. It was, and it wasn't, I would say, not really rocking it, maybe by default. So between 92 when we opened in 96, I got married, had kids, and kind of had this normal life now, right? But I was still sort of having a bit of imposter syndrome, like, hey, I'm wearing sweatpants to work every day. Certainly this isn't going to last, right? But yet in 98, we did, $1 million in training out of, at that time, we'd expanded to like 3,000 square feet. I'm like, I look back on that now, that's a lot of personal training, right? And a lot of our clients at the time were really high-end, sort of these social movers and shakers, right? Atlanta's it's a big R&B city, so it was people like Usher and, I can't even think. There's 1,000,001 R&B artists that would come in. L.A. Reid had a home down the street. Actually, Usher bought his home and had like a studio in the back, and all these R&B artists. It was just fun times, but it was what all the cool kids were doing, right?
You didn't even know how good you had it, did you?
I didn't. I really didn't. Well, and so we had this banner year, and now I'm again with a mortgage and kids and everything. And then 99 rolls around, and it's like I go from the smartest guy in the world to almost out of business. And the reason that happened was because I had independently contracted employees. They're good folks, but it's like they were running their own business in my business, right? And a few of them decided to go and do their own thing. And I look back on it now, I really don't blame them for probably wanting to try that. But it devastated our business. So, $1 million a year is around $83,000 a month in revenue. We went from that down to around $12,000 because we had a couple of other issues as well due to lack of leadership and business systems. So man, going from 83,000 to 12, even though I wasn't living a lavish lifestyle, that was a massive hit to my ego.
Yeah.
And so I had some mentors in my life that I asked sort of, what am I doing wrong? I loved what we were doing. I wanted to continue to do it. There's very few jobs where you can go home, put your head on the pillow at night and know that you're making a real difference in people's lives. And selfishly, I like that. And this is one of those businesses where you can do that, right? And so it went from, sort of Wild West, everybody doing what they want and it doing well, to, wait a minute, we need to take a step back and start to systemize what a lot of people consider to be more of an art, right? Which is personal training. And so can we do that? And we started with the easy stuff, which was the training itself. Like if a client comes in and they move this way and they have these injuries, how are they to be trained? And I'm sitting on, a facility that I've personally guaranteed. It's my lease. I think I had a business loan at the time. It's like, well, all this is mine, so this should be my best practices, right, at the time.
So it started about, 99, 2000 when it started going into play?
Yep.
Okay.
About 2000 when we finally scratched our way back. At that time, we started to notice a couple of interesting trends. Like we would see that somebody that was doing personal training would bring in a friend of theirs. We just called it partner training. And they would pay a little bit less because there was two people. Coaches could make a little more. The business would make more. And it was really fun as well. Like the people participating seemed to stick around longer and they had a lot more fun. And a little bit of the social part of the session that was such a strain as a coach was now being handled by the participants. So it allowed you to have more bandwidth as a coach and coach more people in a given day and help more people. And they paid less. I'm like, wow, this is really a good sign. This is probably where things are headed. So we switched our one-on-one training business over to what we called small group training, which, in this day and age, that can be confused for a lot of different descriptions of things.
Sure.
But in the Alloy Fitness franchise, it really just means 6 people or less working with one coach. And that's what we feel like we could still make a brand promise of personal training. So we moved from one-on-one to what we call small group, which allowed us to still do personal training, but just scale it. So that made it less expensive and that made it more scalable for us as a business. We could help more people and we could make better margins at the same time. So it's really a win-win.
How'd the clients take that when you first changed that?
It was tough. At first, we were really worried that there was some magic in that one-on-one connection, right? Because we would do things like, fetch a towel or grab someone's weights and bring them over to them. So we were really worried that when we lost that little bit of connection, that we thought that something would happen, that we might lose those customers. But what happened was the exact opposite of that. It was funny how just getting people to own a little bit of their own fitness, and I'll give you examples. It would be something as small as saying to you, Matt, go grab a 16K kettlebell. Now, in the past, I would have grabbed it for you because I had nothing else to do except tell you more stories. And here you tell me stories about your kids. I tell you stories about my weekend. It's like, I've heard all of your stories. I've seen you 3 days a week for 3 years. Now I would say, Matt, you go get your own kettlebell.
How dare you?
Exactly. And that's the look that you would get at first. People would look over their shoulder like, me? It's like, yes, it's not going to bite you on the neck. Go get it. You might burn a calorie or two. And so we were worried that somehow in that disconnect, we would lose customers because that's what they were paying for. But what we found was the exact opposite, meaning if someone could go and grab their own kettlebell, which is something that they'd never done before, there was just enough ownership of their own program to then cross over to things outside of the gym. Meaning now maybe I can make a better choice for lunch, right? Or maybe I won't have, a pint of Haagen-Dazs at night, because, and so what we were so most feared ended up being the exact opposite. And then all of our success stories skyrocketed with the same clientele that was somewhat enabled in a one-on-one training setting was now sort of owning their fitness just by default. And then coaches had more margin, right? Because they could, like literally in their sessions and in their lives, because now they could, coach people as a coach, and sort of that social dynamic changed where it wasn't all carried by the trainer / psychologist. It was somewhat carried by the group. And so there was better professional boundaries, and all these ancillary benefits that we never could have anticipated came up, which was awesome. And so, that's probably 2003 by the time we transitioned everyone over to this small group setting and had really figured out how to really apply, personal training to a group of people in a way that felt and in every way was as good and maybe even better because the social dynamic than one-on-one training, right?
So it sounds like you got everybody on board, got the programming, everybody doing the same things, doing the same things. And what you probably didn't expect was the culture change.
Yeah.
It made it more of a sociable place. People want to hang out.
It was almost like all the benefits, because I had worked in the large gyms, right? And I always saw a good social dynamic around what we call Group X, which would be like aerobics or Les Mills or whatever those things are, right? And you would see people coming out of those groups and sitting around and talking to each other, or maybe going to coffee, or, there was all these social aspects that you didn't get in one-on-one training. In one-on-one training, people would come in, they have their blinders on, they're just looking for their person, right? Then they would sort of duck out, like, don't talk to me. I just want to work with my person. Yep. And then all of a sudden it was like, wow, we're seeing the social benefits that I'd recognized in the larger gyms from, at the time, what was group exercise, coupled with the specificity and the the goals, I guess, or the success for the client of one-on-one training. So I was like, wow. I mean, and a lot of those things we didn't anticipate. And we were really first to market to do that. So there weren't a lot of people that I had talked to that were already doing it well. And so these were things we were just figuring out on our own. And at that time, once we launched that, then we started to see that there might be something for even a larger group. And it was mainly a price point play at that point. So it's like, all right, our personal training was now more affordable and we were helping more people and our business was making more money. It's like, wow, this is a good thing. It's like, maybe there's even a lower price point, right? That could expose us, because we were only one brick and mortar at the time. You're going to draw from about a 12-minute drive radius, right? So it's like, well, what else could we put on our menu to attract people in this radius? And then we started essentially boot camp, for lack of better terms, which is 20 people getting sweaty, right? And that went really well at first. We have 40 people in each group, on average. And it was a lower price point, so it exposed us to maybe a younger clientele at the time. And that went really well. So, if you look at overall our trajectory, it was 10 years of one-on-one training. So we understood that really well, and we did it really well. Then moving into this small group setting, just from seeing intuitively sort of what was happening with clients, then starting a boot camp on top of that. So what we settled on was this sort of layered approach at the time, which was like, great, we're doing, group training, which again, for us, we call it team training, which is the 20 people getting sweaty. That was at a low price point. We're doing personal training, which is a bit more expensive, but it's more specific, has more accountability. It's got all the pluses of one-on-one training. It's just more affordable. Right. And we had a couple of other layers of things in there. And it went really well. And so, we landed on this crazy model. We expanded eventually to around 8,000 square feet. We were doing a really, really high revenue at one point. And because it was one of the highest revenue per square foot facilities in the country, that sort of put us on the radar with some educational platforms to come and speak. We started doing a lot of consulting for other trainers. And then, around 10 years ago, someone introduced me to a Gold's Gym owner who's local to Atlanta. They're not exactly in our market. They're west of the city. And the really dynamic, smart owner, and always looking for what's next. And he came in and stood in our facility on a Saturday. And there was like 40 people doing team training. And I think there was 6 coaches, with small groups. And it was just an absolute madhouse. And he basically said, I've never seen anything like this. Can you take this and bring it into my facility and replace my personal training department? And that became the birth of licensing. All right. And at the time it was like, man, I don't want to do that. Like, we're these guys, you're those guys. But it sounded like an interesting challenge. And I thought, wow, this would be a way for us to help more people. Right. To take what we've built and actually take it to market and help more people. And so it went over really well. And we ended up with more people in the Gold's Gym brand. And then it just took off from there. And, fast forward to, earlier this year, and we had licensed a couple thousand clubs worldwide. Right. And some really big brands that we built white label versions of, and some independents, and all over the world, from India to, Tasmania, everything in between. It's always fun to throw out these odd places, It's crazy. Cyprus. I mean, you name it, like kind of all over the board, right?
And it just started with you operation your programming.
It all started with a huge hiccup, right? Yeah. And then that became essentially what is the Alloy Fitness franchise now, is exactly what seemed like a disaster ended up being the perfect opportunity for us to systemize what we were doing.
Well, it sounds like through that journey, obviously you went through a lot of ups and downs, running your own business, figuring it out. Then you took that, and then you were helping other people figure it out because they were running into the same stuff.
It was basically you were buying a shortcut. Like, whether it was Alloy licensing or the Alloy Fitness franchise that we have now, you're basically buying a massive shortcut for your business. All tried and true systems, believe me, we have screwed everything up at one point or another. But in doing that and making those mistakes, those are all, as you know, the way that we look at those are all opportunities to improve or to make things better or to fix things, right? Sure. And so all of those things culminated into this licensing product that we put all over the world. And we got into earlier this year, and we were then being required in the franchise disclosure documents for other franchises. Like, hey, you have to run this thing, which we would call it Alloy. Sometimes it's called other things. And we thought, I think a better vehicle for our customer, right? For our owner is going to be like the Alloy Fitness franchise, not necessarily a license, because a license, you could offer some support, but you couldn't offer enough support to really make it work the way that we would like to see it work. And honestly, to control it, but to control it in a way that would make it be more successful. So we decided to pivot. So it was a long process, 27 years from opening a facility to finding out how our term small group training works, to launching team, to working in other environments, me sitting on the board for all kinds of really great dynamic organizations, taking a peek under the covers at some things that work, some things that don't, and then deciding just based on market conditions and what we felt like our special sauce was, which was that small group training, that 6 or less people with one coach, that we really need to put that in our own franchise structure. And so we decided to do that, and that's what we're doing moving forward. So to speak to what Alloy Fitness franchise is, it is a personal training franchise, but it's scalable, meaning that it's affordable so you can help more people, but it's still personal training, right? So it's been great. It's the special sauce in what we've done and what we've learned by having it worldwide is it's the one thing in what we did that was so unique and so different.
Right.
And it produced the best results. So as a side note, and we're kind of hopping around, but as a side note, any facilities that we worked with that were doing this type of personal training as their main source of income, it was our main vertical, if you will, right? Where 90% of our income was coming from. And any other club that we work with that was doing that were very successful. Ones that just leaned into what we call team training, or which is that large group boot camps, CrossFits, any of the things that fit into those categories, were not as successful. The customer churn was much higher. The price point was lower. And quite honestly, in this day and age, that particular vertical is just flooded with competition. So just by default, it's like, well, wait a minute. We're better at personal training. We were born in personal training. We spent 10 years doing it. We just figured out how to scale it. People still want personal training. People that get personal training pay more, and they stay much, much longer in your business than people that don't. That's where it's at.
Right. So that came from, all your experience growing this place, then all your experience licensing. And we found out what the best thing really from both. We've made it even better. And now that's where we are today. If you were somebody, looking to start a business, what would you do now? Obviously, I already know the answer. Would you franchise or start your own brick and mortar? And what's the difference? I mean, what's the benefit?
It sounds like a self-serving answer because we have Alloy Fitness franchise coming to market. So it sounds self-serving. But honestly, knowing what I know now, I wouldn't start from scratch. I wouldn't do it. Like when I mentioned before, getting a massive shortcut is what you're buying. Right. Well, imagine having someone already build all the resources and everything that you need, and you take that massive shortcut and then you go and you make money with it. Now, so 100% I would do a franchise.
Right.
100%. Because recreating the wheel, it just doesn't make any sense.
Right. I mean, if you talk to yourself 27 years ago, right?
Yeah.
You just tell yourself, talk to your future self, be like, listen,
you
want to go through all this?
Do you want to spend 27 years figuring it out, or do you want to buy a proven model? And then listen, here's what I want everyone to understand. You still have to be an entrepreneur, right? So the magic in scaling a business isn't so much creating the nuts and bolts. I mean, if you look at business overall, the crazy mad scientist creator is never the person that really scales something or makes money with it. Someone grabs the concept or idea, and then they operationalize it really well. So the entrepreneurship that's important in a franchise model is you're buying a massive shortcut, and then you have to take that business model and you still have to make it come to life. Mm-hmm. So you have to hire the right people. You have to exhibit great leadership. You have to do all the other things. So if you're going to buy an Alloy Fitness franchise, it's like, yes, it's a turnkey solution, but it's only as turnkey as your ability to hire good people and to run systems well, right, and to have the stick-to-itiveness, if you will, right? The resolve to continue to run the right play.
Obviously, if you're going to be successful in anything, you have to be able to do that. But wouldn't you much rather have somebody be like, look, these are the things to do, rather than trying to figure it out on your own?
100%.
And going, lots of failures, some successes, up and down all the time. I mean,
and that sounds fun to a lot of young entrepreneurs. It's like, I want to just do this on my own. It's like, I'm not quite sure that I could tell someone like that not to do it. You almost have to do it. Here's what I will tell you. Someone like me, who's sort of been there, done that, and some of our great licensees who are good friends of mine as well, who are interested right now in buying an Alloy Fitness franchise, even though they have successful private brands of their own, what they all know now is what I wish I could tell every brand new entrepreneur, which is like, listen, it sounds fun and amazing to create all these things from scratch. It's not. What's more amazing is to have a business that makes money and to have bandwidth and resources that tell you and answer all those questions that you need, because that way you have speed. You don't take 27 years. You run the play, right? And there's a big advantage from an operational standpoint. So there's really sort of two types of people that I think would be good for, say, an Alloy Fitness franchise or any fitness franchise. That would be the owner-operator, someone who's going to buy it and run it. Now, why would they want a franchise instead of starting their own thing? Again, it's a massive shortcut and it's bandwidth, right? It's a team of people helping you, because you're a little bit on an island out there as an entrepreneur. It can be lonely. It's difficult. So to have someone else like behind you powering it, testing things in a sandbox and bringing them forth if they work, that's invaluable. Otherwise, you're doing all that trial and error on your own, which is time and money. It's crazy, right? Now, the other type of again, an Alloy Fitness franchise, ideal customer would be an investor. So this is someone who says, listen, I may not want to work in the gyms every day, but I'd like to invest in a territory of 5, something like that. Well, anyone that's savvy with money that understands franchising understands that you're going to try to build this enterprise, and then you're going to want the option to sell.
Right.
You don't have to, but 5 to 7 years down the road, you're probably going to want to look at selling.
Right, or at least an end game in there, right?
There's an end game. Exactly. And so if you're an investor type, it's like, well, you're going to, will I get a good return on my investment? And if you're savvy with money, you understand that a franchise structure gets a much higher multiple on their EBITDA or their profit, right, when they go to sell than does an independent model.
Sure.
Because the investor, the new buyer, the person that's investing in that new or in that business, understands that there is a system that's powering this, right? Someone else is helping. Right. And so they're buying something. They don't want to buy a business that they're going to work in. Mm-hmm. It's an investment for them. So they want you to have a strong management structure. That's where your entrepreneurial spirit has to come into play. But they also want to understand that there's a brand behind it and there's systems behind it that aren't just coming out of the wacky, crazy rat squirrel brain of this crazy entrepreneur, right? They want to understand that it's a proven system and they can buy it and just run with it. So again, if you're an independent owner, it's the operational shortcut and the support. And if you're an investor, it's the opportunity to make a bigger multiple on your money. And that's what Alloy Fitness franchise or any other fitness franchise or any franchise is going to help you do.
Yeah. Makes sense to me. I don't know. Knowing what I know, I've been in here, I wouldn't want to open up my own brick and mortar at this point. I mean, I'd want, got all the programming, you have all the software and everything bunched up. You don't have to worry about it. And you don't got to make all your own marketing content. I mean, it's just a lot.
Yeah. Imagine saying, okay, I got to find space. I got to negotiate a lease. I got to do demographic work. And you need to do all these things, by the way. This doesn't happen by accident, right? So, okay, you do all that, which is expensive and time consuming. You have to learn the processes, or somebody can do it for you, right? You have to, again, negotiate a good lease. You have to decide what type of equipment that you need. You have to decide what type of efficient programming. You have to kind of figure out pricing structures. You have to figure out an employment structure. Do I need a manager? Am I going to work as a manager? I mean, there's a lot of sort of questions that you have to answer before you even get the doors open, much less than what's my marketing play long-term? What's my sales process? Sure. And what are my retention tools? And is my brand overall going to be relevant enough in my market, long-term for me to have any staying power? And then if I end up at my age, and I'm older and I'm like, man, I've been in this for a while, I want to look at selling. Are you going to be able to sell it? Or are you going to be seen as this wacky entrepreneur that's just doing all kinds of funky things until you just can't stand out on the floor and train people anymore, right? So I don't know. Again, it sounds self-serving because we have Alloy Fitness franchise coming to market. But for me, I wouldn't do it any other way. And that's before we started. One of the reasons we started the franchise was because I think it's an amazing vehicle for people to take something they love and make money with it and help more people. That's the only reason we did it. We could have stayed with a license, right, and just continued to sell that worldwide. That was a lot of fun as well. But I think to really make the biggest impact, the Alloy Fitness franchise is the best vehicle to do that.
Sure. I mean, you saw the progression, say, from personal training to small group training, things like that, and you were able to evolve. The same thing was happening with licensing. Franchises were trying to put us in there, and they're obviously already trying to build what we had licensing. It was the next step. You can't, I mean, we would not be able to compete long run with licensing with what other franchises are doing.
Right. And if you're going to power everyone else's franchise, you might as well start your own. That's right. another reason for us. It's like, Absolutely. It's an amazing vehicle for our end users. We can bring people into the fold even closer to the brand that we're so proud of. And again, if we're the special sauce in someone else's, why not just start our own? Yeah, and really just wrap it all up and give it to someone as turnkey, as best as possible. And we have so much experience in the brick and mortar side. All these gyms we work with worldwide. We opened a concept model 3 years ago to stress test it first, right? Worked out great. Blew up our amazing home-based gym, the mothership, if you will, to become this new model. We believe in it that much. That's relatively new for us. And the response from clients has been amazing. It's so much simpler. It's like, this is what we do. And we get back to the core of what we're good at, which is personal training.
Right.
When you look at trends in the market, things like specificity, active aging, right? So going into this 50 plus market, there's a lot of trends that this Alloy Fitness franchise serves by default, but there's just a million and one reasons to do it. And to answer your question, long answer to your question is absolutely, I would do a franchise in a minute. I would find what spoke to me as a brand. I would look at market conditions. I would look at trends, and I would buy something that I believed in that had staying power.
Yeah, staying power is a big thing, though.
It is.
That's one of the reasons we're do small group training, right?
Well, exactly. So just some little stats that are interesting for any listener here, if you're starting your own business or not. When we look at team training, so 20 people getting sweaty, the average stay in those gyms is somewhere between 3 and 7 months, right? So, and the pay is lower. So you're going to spend the same amount of customer acquisition cost to get a customer in your gym for 3 to 7 months at $150 a month or $100 a month. If you get someone into the gym at personal training, you're talking about $300 a month and the average stay being 36 months. So like, who do you want? What's the lifetime value, which is a metric that we should all be measuring? What's the lifetime value of those customers, right? So a lot of times I think people just chase what they think is trendy. And maybe they're getting into fitness from a position of not knowing much about fitness, but take it from people who are in fitness and who have seen every imaginable type of fitness and every imaginable brand. There's a shelf life for some of these, right?
Sure.
But coaching and accountability and making people feel good about their fitness and doing it in a relevant way, i.e. personal training, it doesn't have a shelf life. It'll be around forever.
Absolutely.
So does that help? I mean, that's why we're doing it. And I know it might seem like a self-serving message, but literally that's why we're doing it. So I think it was a great question. I've had people ask me the same one offline and I give them the exact same answer.
Great. No, it's awesome. Thank you.
All right, Matt.
Good stuff.